Former U.S. President Donald Trump stunned diplomats when he abruptly announced on Twitter that he was canceling a planned state visit to Denmark. His reason was as unconventional as it was controversial. Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen had firmly rejected any discussion about selling Greenland to the United States. In Europe, Frederiksen quickly launched a diplomatic counteroffensive, traveling between capitals to shore up political backing from NATO partners and Arctic Council members. Standing at a podium in Copenhagen, her tone was unusually resolute. She commended the people of Greenland, a semi-autonomous territory within the Danish kingdom, for their resilience under escalating U.S. pressure. Her remarks were not symbolic. They were a direct response to renewed signals from Washington under Trump's second tenure of an ambition to secure strategic control over the resource-rich Arctic island. While media headlines focused on the public sparring between Washington and Copenhagen, a quieter but more consequential maneuver was taking place. Another nation, leveraging Arctic shipping routes, rare earth mineral access, and climate-driven territorial shifts, executed a strategic move that could redefine the region's power dynamics. That move, still unfolding, hinted that Greenland's fate was no longer just a bilateral issue, but a central piece in a global geopolitical contest. The spark for this confrontation came from a headline-making declaration. In early 2025, freshly returned to the White House, Donald Trump made an unambiguous pledge. One way or another, we're going to get Greenland. The idea wasn't new. In 2019, during his first term, he had publicly floated purchasing the island, only to be met with a flat rejection from Denmark, triggering a short-lived diplomatic storm. Many assumed the notion had died there. They miscalculated. After securing a second term in November 2024, Trump swiftly revisited his flagship objectives, completing the southern border wall, attempting to broker a settlement in Ukraine. But one stood apart for its geopolitical audacity, bringing Greenland under direct U.S. control. Initially, his language hinted at commercial negotiation. By March 2025, that veneer was gone. In a forceful address to Congress, Trump dropped the language of partnership entirely. He argued that the United States should assume outright control of Greenland, casting it as essential for American national security and Arctic dominance. It was no longer framed as a transaction. It was presented as strategic inevitability. Inside the West Wing, his National Security Council began combing through declassified Cold War-era files. Two rarely discussed documents emerged. One, a 1950s-era Pentagon assessment warning of an Arctic gap in continental defense, where Soviet forces could exploit northern approaches. The other, an unimplemented 1980s plan to expand and modernize Thule Air Base in far northern Greenland. For Trump's advisors, these weren't historical curiosities. They were roadmaps for embedding permanent U.S. military and political presence on the island. Washington's interest was not purely about military positioning. Beneath Greenland's vast ice sheet lies an immense trove of untapped wealth. An estimated 38 billion tons of rare earth elements and critical minerals, including niobium, graphite, and zirconium, essential for advanced electronics, renewable energy systems, and next-generation weapons. Geological surveys also point to the potential of over 17 billion barrels of oil and vast natural gas deposits. For Pentagon planners, the island's far northern coastline carries an additional strategic significance. It creates a radar coverage gap through which Russian submarines could potentially transit the Arctic undetected. Trump framed the issue as both a matter of national security and economic sovereignty. He argued that it was strategically reckless to allow China, already investing heavily in global rare earth supply chains, or any rival power to gain a foothold in Greenland's resource sector. Since the United States already contributes to Greenland's defense through NATO commitments, his administration pressed Congress to fund a Minerals First initiative, coupling Arctic defense expansion with accelerated resource extraction for U.S. industrial supply chains. The backlash from Nuuk and Copenhagen was immediate and unequivocal. Greenland's government, which exercises extensive self-rule under the 2009 Self-Government Act, condemned the proposal outright. One senior official called it wild and weird to treat a sovereign community as a real estate transaction. Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen underscored that Greenland's destiny rests solely with its 56,000 inhabitants. By mid-March 2025, Denmark's Folketing and Greenland's Inatsisartut issued a rare joint declaration rejecting any discussion of sovereignty transfer. They warned that coercive pressure from Washington would fracture NATO's cohesion in the Arctic. Greenlandic Prime Minister Moot Borup Egede accused the U.S. of eroding long-standing trust, while another minister reminded the world that Greenland had been part of the Danish realm for more than 8 centuries, and that no amount of strategic value made it negotiable. The confrontation sent shockwaves through NATO. Norway stood firmly with Denmark, warning that any infringement on Danish sovereignty would trigger the alliance's collective defense provisions under Article 5. Poland, typically aligned closely with Washington, adopted a conspicuous silence, wary of jeopardizing its critical U.S. defense relationship. Canada openly rejected the use of resource leverage for territorial aims, mindful that such a precedent could threaten its own Arctic sovereignty. France took one of the most assertive positions, dispatching a nuclear-powered submarine to patrol Baffin Bay and committing funds to construct a modern airport in Greenland, a tangible sign that Europe was prepared to deepen Arctic engagement without coercive conditions. Beneath the surface of this high-profile standoff, a quieter but strategically astute move was unfolding, led by Canada. Well before Trump's renewed push reached its peak, Canadian firms had been in advanced talks with Greenland's government, pursuing not sovereignty but sanctioned resource development in alignment with European partners. By spring 2025, these negotiations produced a $3 billion suite of mining and infrastructure agreements. Greenland Resources Inc., a Toronto-based firm, secured a 30-year concession to extract molybdenum, a metal essential for high-strength steel production and advanced industrial alloys, with financing from the European Investment Bank and Denmark's Export Credit Agency. Meanwhile, Amaroq Minerals revived a long-dormant gold mining project, bolstered by a diverse coalition of backers. Denmark, Norway's sovereign wealth fund, British private capital, and even select U.S. investors, all advancing under Greenland's explicit consent while Washington remained fixated on a sovereignty bid that was going nowhere. As we've seen, the story unfolding in Greenland isn't just about remote mines or obscure minerals. It's about the shifting balance of global power, where quiet deals, decades-long licenses, and cross-border investments are shaping the future in ways that most of the world won't notice until it's too late. The question now is whether the United States can catch up, or if it has already ceded the advantage in one of the planet's most strategically valuable frontiers. Because in a world where control over resources means control over the future, those who move first and think decades ahead are the ones who write the rules. This is more than an Arctic story. It's a warning that the quiet deals of today can become the defining power struggles of tomorrow.